Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Boston-based jazz saxophonist and longtime educator Dino Govoni. We talked to him at length in early November about his 2021 CD, Hiding in Plain Sight, and both his life and education and music overall. This is a recording that was made in January 2020 at Big Orange Sheep in Brooklyn, and it almost didn't happen. Along with recording and playing, he is on the faculty of the Berklee College of Music. He's got great stories. Enjoy.
Okay, Dino, thank you again for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
No worries.
Let's go ahead and dive right into In Plain Sight. Talk to me a little bit about, it's coming out during this pandemic. There's a chance for live performance. Just overall, how does this release feel for you?
It's nice to finally get the record released because, as I had said the other day, we had recorded this right, just prior to the pandemic, about 2 months earlier, not knowing everything was about to shut down on us. And then all of a sudden we have this recording that we're not sure what we're going to do with. Are we going to release it during the pandemic? Because there was a couple of projects I was on that did get released during the pandemic. And, they got some little attention, but there were no gigs. No one could do gigs. It was kind of a drag. I felt bad for the cats who put out these records and they couldn't play. So the thoughts of releasing this now and hopefully getting some gigs out of it is it's positive, and right now the record itself is getting some positive feedback. So I'm hoping that we're able to jump in and get a little run going. It's exciting.
The listener, what are you hoping the listener gets from this project?
I hope that they can sense the fact that this was a real-time recording, 5 guys in the room playing, just the raw energy that comes from it. I think is something that is, people are going to be able to sense. I hope they walk away with that feeling like they were pretty much at a performance. That's kind of what I'm hoping, and I've been kind of getting that feedback also from people who they said short of leaving the house, they felt like it was a real live performance that they were attending. So.
You've been at this for quite a while. Talk to me about your beginnings. How did you get the jazz bug? How did this all start for you?
When I was young, my dad introduced me to a lot of different types of, I'm going to use the term more like earlier jazz, coming out of Dixie into some early swing, just coming up onto the edge of bebop. My dad liked it, but he kind of stopped there in his own ways of listening until I started listening to some more modern things. And when I say modern, Coltrane's late 50s into the 60s, where he was, kind of morphing out of his post-bop into more of his avant-garde. Again, I have to say that it really does start with my dad, who introduced me to a clarinet when I was 8 years old, and then eventually saxophone, etc., and had me studying with some good private teachers, early on, who were also coming from more a jazz background, instead of a classical background, even though I was playing clarinet. So they all kind of pushed me in that direction. The next person who kind of pushed that button a little further I was about 13 or 14. One of my hockey coaches, his brother, was a rather accomplished musician, and he's the one who introduced me to learning how to improvise. Between, these three different people, that's kind of where it all started, and the interest kept going.
What was the first live show you saw that blew you away?
Well, there was one of the local high schools always brought in some really great, well-known performers. And one concert that I do recall going to with my dad was to see two of the hottest local guys who were also quite well-known, Dick Johnson being one of them, a saxophonist who eventually he took over the Artie Shaw Orchestra for, 15 years or so as the leader, and clarinetist. But they put together a group of local musicians and had Maynard Ferguson as a guest in a small group setting. And just to see, Maynard's overwhelming presence, whether it's just him talking or playing, he was quite commandeering of attention.
Right on.
And I think the other one that was live that kind of really got me was, being a clarinet player young, was seeing Benny Goodman play live in a small group setting also.
As an educator and a performer, we've had a lot of time during this lockdown quarantine to kind of be self-reflective. What have you learned about yourself that maybe you didn't realize before that's going to make you stronger as you promote this album and teach your students?
I've always considered myself a utility saxophonist. I mean, you hire me for whatever gig, whatever style, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do it. But I think the lockdown made me realize that there is this other side of me that I probably don't acknowledge. A lot of people go, "Oh, you're an artist." I've never seen myself in that light. But I guess there is a part of me that's more of an artist than I would probably give myself credit for, and I feel like I want to pursue that side even more so now, in more regards to writing new material and try to record more of that, and see what direction it takes me in.
What do you like the best about being in jazz, being both a performer and an educator? What do you look forward to the most every day?
From the performing side, I think it's the versatility that, night to night, you're going to try to do something different. You're not going to just try to recreate what you had played in a previous show. That ability to try to push new boundaries, try to take your approach in a new direction, even night to night. As far as teaching, I like to watch students all of a sudden get a concept on their own, not just by me telling them something, but all of a sudden they see it, and you can see it in their face when they play something that they've been trying to get to, and when they understand it, and then they can recreate that. It's kind of a nice thing to see, to try to push them in those directions and watch them grow.
So you've had quite a long career in the world of jazz. If you have a dream tonight and run into your younger self, and you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think I would have maybe, from getting away from the utilitarian side of playing, but thinking about more just the jazz side of it, that element, I think I would have done a few things differently in the sense of maybe I would have chosen a different path in regards to what gigs I was taking. And when I did finally move to New York, I feel like I might have gone there a bit on the late side. I should have gone when I was younger, almost pretty much out of college. Would have been a good time to make that move. Because what's interesting is I started working with a band that was pretty much based in New York, yet I kept my roots up in Massachusetts, and I probably should have just taken that as a bit of an omen and followed through with that and gone there. Although on that side of it, I might not have, jumped into Berklee a number of years later. I started teaching at Berklee about 13 years after I had left the college. So I don't know, it's a little bit of a yin and a yang on both sides of that. But, yeah, I don't know. It's just, I think, just a slightly different alteration of my path.
So you've been lucky to be around Titans and Jerry Bergonzi and George Garzone. What have you learned from them that not only has helped you as a performer, but as an educator?
I think, as I was saying before, you can try to tell somebody how to do something, but sometimes it's like you're talking at them. And I think particularly George never forced anything on you. He would just say things, make suggestions, repeat them at times when necessary, but ultimately the way you would do it in such a way that eventually it would kind of settle into your own thought process and start to have an effect on how I, as a young player, would progress, and then I take a lot of how they approached me and try to pass it on to my students, Jerry had a better way of organizing material, so I think I've learned some of that from him as far as how to approach certain types of students who need a bit more of a very rigid approach to how they learn. And that's the other thing. George and Jerry teach completely differently. One's very organized, one is much looser, and I've learned that both approaches work depending on the type of student that you have. So I think I was fortunate that I had teachers who came from two different perspectives.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, your students, but ultimately you live your life, you have a perception of you. Who do you think you are?
That's a good question. I have no idea. Some days I'm not sure. If you listen to most people, I'm wound up to the moon. And I can't disagree with them. I kind of wake up bouncing off the wall. I see myself as being driven and lazy all at once. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. I get it.
Because I'm one of those that I can't just dabble in something. So that's where people will think you're lazy, because I don't. Once I get into something, I am in 125%, and I'm just going to go. So I get, very focused, and, and once I hit that state on a particular project, then that's all I'm going to see until it's over. And I've done that with pretty much anything that I'm interested in. I just go in, full bore. But overall, I try to, as a teacher, I try not to overwhelm my students, although I think my personality does get big at times, and especially the ones I've just met and they don't know how to handle me, they're just staring at me like, whoa. I'm coming at them like a tornado. And I've at least begun to recognize that after teaching for 25 years, and where I need to slow down sometimes with some of them. I think I'm quite giving, and I think that is a good thing for my students also, because I do give them, I think I was going back to the teacher, what did I learn? Jerry was brilliant. He said a line that stuck with me forever. He says, I'll show anybody anything I do. It's up to them to go figure it out. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't, people think you're going to hold secrets. You ask me what I just did, I'm going to tell you exactly what I might have been doing, thinking. I think to be an effective teacher, you can't hold back. You've got to just, whatever somebody wants to know, give it to them. Like I said, they've got the talent. They're gonna do something with it.
Your description reminds me of a cat, and cats remind me of baseball players. They're all loosey-goosey and hanging out, languid, but when that ball comes near them, they turn into animals.
Yeah, well, we have 4 cats, so maybe that's something to do with it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you got the spirit of a cat, for sure.
Yeah, right.
Hey, Dino, thank you for taking a minute out and redoing this. I really appreciate it.
No worries, Joe. I'm glad it worked out.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Boston, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Dino for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.